What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Dialed In. Today, we have a special guest. We have Dr. Petersen. We're going to break things down from physical therapy to bodybuilding to coaching to competing. We're going to cover all of it. So I'll let him introduce himself. We'll go from there.
What's up, guys? I'm Dr. Ben Petersen. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm also an NSCA certified strength conditioning specialist. I'm an OCB natural pro and fellow online coach. And so I'm excited to talk today.
Cool. And give a quick breakdown just so people know, what is the title of physical therapy even consist of? How do you get that? I know some people are like, oh, I graduated undergrad. How do I become a physical therapist? Give us like a quick 10, 15 second breakdown so people know what it consists of.
Quick breakdown on getting your doctorate in physical therapy. So there are some physical therapists out there who maybe just have a bachelor's degree or maybe a master's. Over the last, I can't remember exactly when they transitioned it to a doctorate degree, but it was relatively recently, within the last maybe 10 to 15 years. So if you see a really old physical therapist, they might just have their bachelor's, and the field has really been evolving over the last 10, 20 years. And so nowadays, to get your doctorate in physical therapy, you first have to go to undergrad, get your bachelor's degree in a exercise science or related field. You can actually technically have any bachelor's degree and still apply for PT school, but typically more kinesiology, exercise science degrees are a little bit weighted better in terms of admittance to PT school. PT school is much different than chiropractic school, and where chiropractic schools have typically a higher acceptance rate, physical therapy schools typically have a much, much, much lower acceptance rate. And so for example, I went to the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Our whole class of physical therapy students was 60 people for the whole state. And so it tends to be a little bit more of one of those fields where if like you get in, you're good, right? Not saying that everyone passes. There are always people, despite, everyone who goes to PT school, at least in my class, we're all, straight A students. I had a 3.75 GPA in undergrad, but people still flunked out sometimes. But my path was, or the traditional path is, you get your bachelor's, you end up taking the GRE, you then go apply to a bunch of PT schools and pay a bunch of money to apply to them. You interview sometimes, some schools don't interview, and then you could potentially get accepted. After that, it's a 3-year program typically. There are some programs that are accelerated. They'll do 2.5 years or so, but the standard program is typically 3 years. So it's a 7-year total college experience. For me, it took me a little bit longer than 7 years. I had a gap year in between undergrad and grad school, which is also very, very common for a lot of PT students. So most students usually don't get in their first round.
Cool. I want to add one thing, just a fun fact for some of you guys who followed me forever know this, but that was my dream too. I want to be a physical therapist. I got injured when I was in high school, had physical therapists like, wow, I love this job. Like, this guy helped me rehab myself. I want to give back and help other athletes. And so I did my undergrad in physical therapy, kinesiology, exercise physiology, all that together. And then I started applying to grad school, like you said. And first, it was expensive as hell. And for those who don't know, I was very dirt broke my entire life up until a couple of years ago. So pulling together $500-$600 to apply to all my dream schools was hard to do so. Got denied to 7 out of 11 schools, I believe. I got into like University of Colorado, University of Texas, a school in Florida. But I got denied to San Diego State, which was my dream school. I got denied to USC, also dream school. So I got into the ones I wanted to. And once I started talking about what it consisted of, and they're like, oh, you have to have this many hours. I accrued 750 intern hours, hated it. I was like, no, absolutely not. And also, one honorable mention, when they told me, just so you know, it's going to cost you, let's say, $100,000 to do the 3-year program. You're going to come out of school making anywhere between 40 to 80K. And I was like, oh my God, no. So not to tell people not to go that route, but if you're doing it for the money, that is not the right program. Is that safe to say? Is that not the right major job if you want to make a shit ton of money?
It's definitely one of the lower paying, high level degrees out there.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the median entry level salary is like 65 to 70 or so. If you're a seasoned vet, maybe in the 80s. The real money in physical therapy is in home health, in owning your own business, owning your own practice. Then you can start to make more money. But then you're not a physical therapist anymore. Now you're a business owner. Unless you're doing home health, and that's a totally different ball game of healthcare and stuff like that. But physical therapy is Definitely very broad. I mean, there are so many different areas of PT, whether it's in the hospital, or if you're doing home health, or if you're doing pediatrics, or if you're doing sports, orthopedics, stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty broad, but it's a very for the amount of school you go into, it's a little iffy in terms of pay.
I agree with that statement entirely. So I've had a lot of my buddies I went to school with that went on to be physical therapists. Some of them, they don't like it. They just do something else. They have the title still, but they ended up doing like in-person personal training. Some of them canceled entirely, went to dental school. Like they cost them so much money to get where they wanted to. So either way, still a cool major, still cool to be called doctors. All I wanted to say. So moving on though, I had one specific question for you. So did one passion lead to the other? Or were you always interested in both in regards to bodybuilding versus physical therapy? Just anything. Just, I guess, just give us is there any correlation between the two?
Oh yeah, it all works together. I'm a big fitness nerd. And so, the physical therapy track was really just me trying to figure out how to max, like quote unquote, max my knowledge in terms of training, nutrition, and rehab, biomechanics, stuff like that. And so after finishing my exercise science bachelor's degree, I'm like, well, where do I go from here? I'll get my CSCS. Well, where do I go from here? I'll get my DPT. At this point, I feel like I'm pretty good on the educational side of things.
Literally, you have it all.
Still,
you have
obviously
all of it.
Still doing some Con Ed and stuff like that, but I love a good Con Ed course. But I'm pretty excited to be done with college. I've been out of college for a long time, but definitely,
I'm assuming there's no interest in doing more, correct? This is it.
Yeah, this is it. Well, besides Con Ed and stuff, right? Continuing education stuff. But as far as the passion, I've always been really into fitness. I started off as a baseball player. And so I was a pitcher. It wasn't very good, to be completely honest. If you look at my college stats, I was pretty terrible. But I really liked the training aspect of it. And I really liked doing that. And so when I ended up retiring from baseball, quote unquote, I tore my rotator cuff. So I figured I'd call it good. Into my sophomore year, that's when I really focused more on my training, started doing a little bit of bodybuilding and stuff like that. And that's what really kind of led me down this path.
Nice. Did you play D1, D2, JC? Where'd you play baseball at?
Yeah. So I played junior college baseball at a school in Iowa called Indian Hills. It's a big feeder school for a lot of D1 programs, D2 programs and stuff like that. I ended up getting a couple D2 offers that were from pretty, not great schools. And then I ended up playing a little bit of NAI ball after that. So I wouldn't call myself a great college athlete or anything like that. But I was gritty enough to at least try.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess you got to remember too, for anybody who's watching, who's younger, it's not a guarantee you're going to play the next level either,
Yeah.
It's just, even if you play D2, you get some free cleats, you get a free bat. It's not the same as playing at, Alabama or something, but I mean, it's still impressive nonetheless.
100%. I mean, even if you make it the D1 level, it's kind of like, it's still not that great. I mean, I know a few D1 athletes that I played baseball with in high school who were amazing, top in the state and stuff like that, played D1 baseball. And now they're a high school history teacher. And
yeah. I mean, I think there's, I would assume, but I just feel like there's not a correlation to how great of an athlete you are to like how good you're going to be in terms of being a productive human in the world, right? You could be I see this in my football friends. I played baseball as well, but most of my friends played football as well. So some of them would play D2, D1, and they would put every ounce of effort into that. Like they wouldn't go to class, they wouldn't do anything. It would just get passed along. Especially if you go to a big school, they did nothing, or they got like a basic major that nobody cares about. And when they graduated, they realized like, oh crap, I'm not going to the league. What do I do? And they didn't have any education because they didn't really do anything. And then now, like, I'm not going to say they have crappy jobs, but like for a lack of words, like they just don't have their dream job because they didn't do anything in college and they don't want to go to a trade. So yeah, it's, you could definitely go from being the top dog at your university to being like just a normal job. And that's okay. You're not going to make it to the league. No, not everybody does that.
100%. Cool.
I guess next would be, and this is something I dealt with in my own grad school, but how tough is it balancing physical therapy, schooling with training, dieting, competing? Did you do this at the same time or were they separate? And if so, then just kind of break that down for us.
Yeah. I mean, oh man, just grad school in general I felt like was significantly harder than undergrad. Undergrad, you can kind of coast a little bit. You can cram a little bit. graduate school is much more difficult. At least it was for me. I did compete my third year of PT school, so it would have been around the same time I was doing my internships, and so I ended up competing in 2022. I believe was my first show, or maybe 2021. It would have been either late 2021 or early 2022. But in my first show at I think it was a INBF show, which is, affiliated with the WNBF. So I did a natural show in down in Oklahoma, ended up getting first place, but, not a whole lot of competition, which is something that you'll kind of learn if you've ever done a natural bodybuilding show. Usually those shows are relatively weak compared to like the NPC and stuff like that. But yeah, it was very difficult balancing those, especially at that time. That was my first show. And so I was, trying to get as lean as possible. I didn't know you at the time, but I was trying to get Cody Dial lean. And so being super lean, eating, very, very little calories and trying to work with some random 70-year-old patient in my internship, I'm like on zero carbs or whatever, and just brain dead. So the last few weeks were definitely pretty difficult to manage, both studying, practicing in the clinic, trying to do all my cardio, get all my meals in. And then obviously, the coworkers at the PT clinics wondering what the hell I'm doing, right? And why I look like I'm dying, right?
Yes.
So, especially like over time, you have like your khakis and your nice polo and stuff like that. And over time, it starts to get looser and looser because you get leaner and leaner. And then over time, you're like, man, like nothing really kind of fits right. So, I think for my first show, I probably dropped 30 or so pounds. My last show, I dropped 40 pounds for my show I did 2 shows this year. But I'm dropping 40 for that. And so it's always kind of interesting with like just the clothes and stuff like that from a professional setting. But
what's your height?
I'm 6 foot. I always, when I was in high school, I always thought I was 6'1", so I'd round up to 6'2", because obviously every dude's insecure about their height. But
Absolutely.
I'm 6 foot on the dot. And so I ended up having to remeasure myself. My fiance actually called me out on it. I've always thought I was 6'1", and she's like, "Oh, let's like remeasure." I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually 6 foot." But
I guess that's better than being 5'7" and saying you're 6 foot. If we're being honest here,
Definitely. But yeah, 6 foot. I competed at 182 this summer. My first show, I was 178. But I definitely felt like I did a little bit better this go around.
Nice. So I guess you have your natural pro card, correct?
Yeah, I'm a natural pro for the OCB.
Cool. Do you have any ambitions to make it to the OCB is one who has the natural Olympia, correct? They have that title?
I don't think so. I think that might be a different one, either the WNBF or the PNBA.
Maybe it's the I think it might be the PNBA. Okay. I knew it was one of them though.
Yeah. OCB has the Jordan Cup. That's what their like big show is. And so, yeah, I would love to potentially compete in the Jordan Cup. I qualified for it this year, but did not feel like I was quite ready for that. And at that point, when I got my pro status, I already dieted down for 6+ months. So I didn't want to diet down for another 3 months to wait for the Jordan. So my plan is for next year to do the Viking Cup in Minneapolis in late August. If I do well there, then I'll go to the Jordan Cup, which will be in September. Do I think I'm going to be competitive? Probably not. I don't have the best physique in the world. So, but I love doing it. It's fun. It's a good thing for me. And honestly, just like having that process, I think was like a achievement for me. I don't really feel like I have the best genetics or whatever, but I'll work people every once in a while. So
cool. Yeah, no, that pretty much answers it. I guess so leading into this is just because we talked about it, but when everybody else is deciding to hop on peptides, steroids, cycling, like, why did you choose to stay natural? I guess just kind of give us a breakdown of that. Why did you choose to stay natural when everybody else was not doing that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there's a few reasons, right? From a health perspective, I think it's also just much simpler to not be enhanced. I think a lot of people think that being enhanced is like a quick fix to their problem, and that if they just take this certain peptide or take the steroid or take whatever, that will fix their problem. But little do they know, they still need to eat right, hit their macros, train, and all that stuff.
Yes.
And that's all, what's going to get you most of the results. And realistically, it just adds a lot more complexity to the concoction you got going on in terms of what to manage. And so from a management standpoint, I just find it easier to stay natural. I also think it's just from a health standpoint, you see so many bodybuilders die over the last 10 years. And so it's definitely not something I would like to do. And so realistically, for my goals personally, like I can achieve my dream physique naturally. And so I don't really have ambitions of being the biggest dude in the weight room and being absolutely freaking, 300 pounds, shredded. Right. And so I'd rather be an example of like what people can achieve naturally. And if they just train hard and, eat somewhat well. Right.
No, I mean, that makes complete sense. And anybody I've really talked to who's natural, they kind of have a similar outlook on it, for the most part. It's just they know that I'm not going to be a pro bodybuilder. I'm not trying to die when I'm 50, right? They're trying to live longer. And even myself, I try to, how do I say this? My views have definitely changed over the years, especially when I've seen people get very injured. Maybe not on my own team, but in the industry in general. It's like, if anybody's like a 16 to 19-year-old demographic, they're like, Cody, want to hop on steroids? No, automatically no. It's not up for debate. I don't care. And their clapback is always like, oh, well, C-Bum probably did it, or Jay Cutler did it, or like Arnold did it. It's like, okay, they have the best genetics on earth. Like that's not, you're not them, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I guess I always try to tell people, like, do your first show natural. If you get your ass kicked, so be it. Great. But at least you could say, I did it. These are my genetics. I got this shredded. I held this much mass. If you want to really do steroids after that, do it. But anything before that, I try to be a little bit more cautious, I guess you could say. So
I think a lot of kids, especially, and it's crazy, the DMs I'll get of people who are young, who are hopping on stuff and then ask me for advice. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I cannot help you with this stuff. Go talk to Cody or somebody else. But I don't think they really realize the commitment it is when you start doing stuff like that. And, realistically, I thought I was super fucking smart at 17 years old. I was a moron. And so me looking back on me, I'm like, oh man, these kids don't even know what they're getting themselves into.
Oh, no doubt. And it's just, the thing is, how do I word this? It's not very forgivable, right? Like, steroids don't just like, you don't take and you die. That's not what it is. It's not like you can go take some other recreational substance, you OD, you're going down. Anabolics, it's like you're agreeing to sacrifice maybe 10, 15 years off the later half of your life. And like, that's just kind of how it goes. It's hard to explain to people because they don't want to do that. But again, I've always been pretty open about it. I got really terrible steroid advice. I think I was 21 at the time. And like, the person I asked to, I looked up to, he was a really great bodybuilder, but like, I didn't know he was stupid. I just knew he was buff. At the time I was like, oh, he won his class. Like, he must be like Mr. Olympia. I didn't know that, like, he just was an amateur bodybuilder. I didn't know. So he's like, oh, Cody, take Tren, take D-ball, take test. Like, I took it and I was like, I feel like I'm dying. I'm getting really jacked. My skin looks terrible. I don't feel good. Like, it's like, man, like, why am I not famous? Why am I not? Because I'm 30 years old. So at the same time, it was Johnny Skywalker, Jeff Side, Simeon Panda, Physiques of Greatness, like all like the OGs at the time. Like, I was like, man, we're all the same age as most of these guys. Like, why don't I look like them? And I was always under the assumption that steroids were safe and I could just hop on and look like my favorite competitor, favorite influencer, which it's not true, I guess. But either way, guys, stay natural, do some research, get 5 years of training under your belt, then do it. That's my personal belief and personal opinion. But I had one follow-up question for you. When it comes to peptides in general, and like, obviously I'm biased because I'm opening a peptide company, but I'm trying without being biased, of course. Do you feel that that's something you would ever go into at some point? I know you probably wouldn't touch steroids anytime soon, maybe TRT, but anything peptide related, fat burning related, GLP-1, would you ever go into that world at all, or does that not interest you as well?
Peptides are interesting. They are definitely separate from steroids and stuff like that. And I think that's a good distinction. I think a lot of people, I think for some people, they're putting a lot more stake into them where they feel like they're basically harmless steroids, but they're usually less effective comparatively.
Yes.
Would I ever like dabble into them? I can't, as long as I'm competing. Like, the OCB has those banned. Depends on the type of peptide you take, but it could be anywhere from a 6-month to a 7-year ban on that. And so for me personally, I'm going to steer clear of those until I'm done being and when I'm done being competitive in like the natural circuit of things. But I think they're really promising, especially for a lot of my coaching clients. I have a few clients who are taking GLP-1s and trizepatide and stuff like that. And they need it. Like those people that have just struggled for years and years and just have a lot of food noise, they can really benefit from different medications or TRT and stuff like that. Like we work with Merrick Health for a lot of our blood testing that we do for our clients. And
Nice.
every once in a while, we'll find a client who's, our age. Like I'm also going to be turning 30 here in a month.
Nice.
We'll get a client that's my age that has a testosterone of like 124, right? And so, terrible. And so there are cases and there are people that, just don't have it, that just need some sort of medication that from a therapeutic standpoint where it could be 100% necessary, right?
Yep.
I'm definitely not against it. I'm against abuse, right? I think we're both on that same train.
Yes.
Which is like, hey, if you're going to use it responsibly with the supervision of somebody who's knows what they're doing and is, qualified and stuff like that. But don't just take it willy nilly. And I definitely think there are definite, swaths of people out there that could really benefit from both, TRT and stuff like that, as well as potential peptides. TB500 being one of those, BPC 157, especially from a rehab standpoint, looks very promising. One of our coaches actually on my coaching staff, he tore his pec this summer and he ended up taking that under the supervision of a physician, and he got great results from a rehab standpoint. And so I definitely think that it is promising for sure. I don't like how WADA and, different, drug testing organizations demonize stuff like that. I think that if you're taking if peptides, I think are a little bit demonized because we really don't know as much about them, and they're not as, I don't think the medical society is really trained up on peptides as they should be.
Oh yeah.
Peptides have been around forever. I mean, like insulin is a peptide that diabetics have been taking forever. And so it's not like this is a new thing. It's just more of a thing that people really haven't done a lot of research in recently.
Yeah, no, I have a couple of talking points. I want to dive into that as well.
Go for it. Yeah.
So pretty much what I want to dive into, just I guess just natural versus not, and then just kind of the peptide world and the fat burning world, just especially someone who's getting into this industry. And I've coached people for years about peptides. I even knew about them maybe 2018 or so when people were trying to get me on them. I was like, I don't trust you. You're telling me that this is like a steroid without the side effects? That's BS. They also told me that about SARMs, and SARMs almost destroyed my liver. So didn't fall for that a second time. But there are a time and place that we'll have my guys use peptides, but I guess my only issue now is I have a very hard time understanding why these particular compounds are banned versus these are not banned. So let's say you competing in the OCB or one of the other leagues. I had a client and he was open about it. He asked him like, hey, I took BPC 157 6 months ago. Am I banned? And they're like, how long ago was it? Do you have proof that you did it this time? Like he showed them his like order confirmation. Like I bought it 7 months ago. I took it 6 months ago. Like, am I good? They're like, yeah, come on in. It was just very confusing to me. And then that makes me wonder, like, how many other people were able to take testosterone or steroids or SARMs or whatever. I've had people even try to hire me 1 month out and be like, hey, I took this one compound. Can you help me pass? I'm like, no, because if you fail, I'm going to get blamed. And if you pass, I'm feeling guilty that you beat a bunch of people when you're enhanced. So it's a lose-lose situation. But I guess I want to just turn it over to you. How do you feel about you being a lifetime true natural? Like no matter what, you've never used anything, competing in a natural league where there are guys who genuinely used Trenbolone 5 years ago and now they're competing. I used steroids before. I've been off for years. I could technically compete in the natural league and I would have an unfair advantage technically if I did your league. How do you just feel about that in any aspect?
Yeah. So I'm not sure about some of the leagues. I'm more familiar with the OCB. They have a 7-year ban, and obviously some compounds are a little bit different than others. Mm-hmm. You can get medical exemptions as well. So like, for things like if you're truly hypogonadal, or maybe you had testicular cancer, and so you don't produce any testosterone, there are certain circumstances where they will give you a medical exemption. And obviously, just like, I don't remember which influencer talks about this, but there's, obviously different levels of not nattiness. Right? Like Connor Murphy, I think, was like a big guy who talked about that a lot. And so that's also reflective in some of their bans, like where some things are only 6 months, some things are 3 years, some things are 7 years, right? For the most, hard stuff. As far as competing with somebody who took TRT 7 years ago, I'm not super worried about it, to be completely honest. I'm sure they might have an unfair advantage, but I mean, 7 years is a long time to kind of wash out a lot of those gains and stuff like that. And that also doesn't negate all the hard work and effort they put in over the last 7 years naturally to be able to achieve the physique they have. So yeah, if someone took trim bologna sandwiches 7 years ago and then decided to compete against me, I wouldn't hold them, too much. Right.
Okay. No, I was curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about it, to be honest. I mean, I would do a NPC show and stuff like that as well. I'm not as concerned about, like, I am competitive for sure. I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to go into specific natural organizations to get my pro card and stuff like that. But at the same time, after having it, now I feel like I've accomplished that. So I'm more than happy to compete against people who aren't taking it, because I've already kind of improved myself in like the natural realm. However, just because you have your natty pro card doesn't really mean like everything, because it just always depends on who shows up at your show. For example, I was test judging, man, I don't even know if I can say this, but I was test judging OCB show a few weekends ago at an undisclosed location. And, I'll just keep this as broad as possible, but some categories are very competitive. Some categories do really well, and they're like, that person that has a pro card has a pro level physique, undoubtedly, for sure. There are other people who have just enough people to get a pro card who do not have a pro level physique who end up getting the pro card. And so I definitely think that in order for the OCB to be considered a little more legitimate, I mean, they are a very legitimate organization. They've been around for 22 years and they're the biggest natural organization. But I definitely think there should be some sort of way to kind of gauge whether that person truly has a like pro level physique. I think that's where the NPC does well, where it's actually much more difficult to get an IFBB pro card compared to an OCB pro card. I understand why the OCB does it, because they want to get more pros in the pro circuit to get that really going, because obviously the IFBB pro circuit is great. Like there are tons of competitors and stuff like that. But I mean, they have to compete somehow. And so I get why they do it, but there are always drawbacks to having quote unquote too many pros, and maybe pros that potentially don't really deserve it, to be honest.
So I have a couple follow-ups to that. So I like the OCB before I say this, by the way, but I guess how do I word this? I've had a couple issues with the OCB in regards to, actually, let me reword this in a proper way, then I'll explain what I'm getting at. So I've had a couple of clients do the OCB, and they had medical exemptions, like you said. And this is why I guess I'm a 50-50, why sometimes all my natural guys just do the NPC. And there was another league I had them in. I don't know if I could disclose it, it's a small league and it'll narrow it down too much. But I've had guys who are on TRT for life. I've had them be on T3 for life. I had one girl, I didn't have her compete. She actually ended up switching coaches when I told her I don't coach women, but she was on a GLP-1. And they all got medical exemptions. They got to compete in the league. And I was just like, you're 47, you're on, or 45, 47, you're on TRT, you got the exemption. Like it just didn't seem fair to me, I guess. And leading into your point, why they let them in the first place, they didn't have enough competitors. So they were going to ban him because he was on TRT, even though he got the med exempt one. They're like, I don't think that's fair. And they found out that there was only like 4 people in the men's physique class for that division. So like they let him compete anyway. So again, that's not all OCB shows, and I'm not shitting on OCB. I like OCB. A lot of my guys, I have 15 or 18 OCB pros. I like OCB, but I wish there was a little bit more consistently what's allowed versus what's not, and a lot more transparency. Like, oh, you're on TRT, you're banned for the next 5 years. Like, you can't just let them in because you don't have enough people. Now, connecting that to the NPC, like you said, the NPC is more competitive, the IFBB, but there was a time this year, and it was getting a lot of controversy. There was a particular show, not going to mention it, but everybody knows which one it was, Nationals recently, where there was like 3 people in the class, and nobody top 2 turn pro. And they're like, well, we can't give you guys a pro card. So coaches were having their clients compete in numerous divisions. So it wasn't men's physique. We're just going to pick men's physique. Let's say there's 3 men's physique guys. They're like, hey, I know you're doing classic. Would you mind going down to men's physique as well? We'll pay for it. And now we have 6 people in the class. Your 2 teammates get their pro card. And that was happening in different divisions. People are like, what the hell? Like, you don't deserve a pro card when there've only been 3 of you on stage, you know? And IFBB, it's like, that's not a joke. Like, people will do anything to get an IFBB pro card. So I do assume that it's, or I could definitely say it's one of the most competitive leagues, but there's certain times I'm like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. There has to be a standard that they have to be like, there's 15 people in the class, you can get your pro card. But I don't know. That's my rant. That's all I had to say.
Oh, definitely. I mean, with the OCB, I believe it's 5. I believe they lowered it a few years ago, but I think it's only 5 in your division to qualify for a pro card. But I love the OCB. Obviously, I'm like in it, and I really like it. And obviously, I want to promote natural bodybuilding as much as possible, because I think the more that it gets popular, the more, you know, obviously people will stay natty and stuff like that, and not just pump themselves with androgens and whatever.
Yes.
But yeah, there's always things to fix. And I mean, every organization has, like, you know, things that they could do better at. But yeah, they, you know, having like those medical exemptions, there's always that gray area of like, well, how much TRT you on? Was it actual TRT, or were you just blasting a bunch of stuff and calling it TRT? So, I mean, even some physicians will, like, I've had clients who, you know, their physicians are prescribing some pretty serious stuff. I'm like, man, like, this is pretty wild. But
money talks, bro. It's all about the money. Okay, cool. Well, diving to the next topic. I feel like I could probably ask you one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Will you ever compete in the natural league of the NPC? Does that ever interest you at all? Because, you know, like, they only have a few. Like, nowadays they have maybe 5 or 6 that I know of, but before they had like 1 a year. Do you ever think you're going to branch out to that?
I would definitely do some other organizations. I'm super open to that, and I would definitely be open to it if it was somewhere that I could travel to. You know, living in Nebraska, there's not a whole lot of you know, local natural shows. I think there might be a local natural show in Iowa potentially, but that was one of the things that really drew me to the OCB, is that they do have a ton of shows. And so it makes it a lot more accessible to actually do the damn thing, right? But I would definitely branch out. I mean, I started in the INBF. I would definitely do an INBF show. I'm not sure how it works, having like a pro status in one and go into an amateur in another and stuff like that. I know for the OC, I competed in Nashville.
But we can just finish up the topic of just like, do you think the NPC is going to be the OCB would be as competitive as the NPC in the natural league? Do you think one's going to outgrow the other? Do you think that they at some point should just go together and have one giant natural league? Just anything like that? What could we do to promote more natural bodybuilding, I guess, is what I'm getting at. It's just, it doesn't get the recognition I think it deserves, truthfully. I love IBB, but not everybody wants to pin their butt cheeks. It's not an unknown factor. Like, I love enhanced bodybuilding. I love coaching it, but 60% of my team is natural. They're never going to go to the enhanced league. So, well, I guess, what do you think we could do to get the natural league, bump those numbers up a little bit, I guess you could say?
100%. I think from a natural bodybuilding perspective, I do think that some of these organizations need to combine in order to make a larger organization. I think even the NFL went through something like that many, many, many years ago, where they combined the AFC and NFC into the NFL and stuff like that. But having the NANBF, the PNBA, the INBF and WNBF, and having the OCB, there's 4 different organizations listed off right there. If they just all combined and made it their, natural organization, I think that'd be the best thing. And honestly, I think it'd be good for the sport in general, to really consolidate and make it a bigger, more professional league where somebody can, where there's plenty of shows, where they're plenty competitive enough, but just having it so spread out and so thin is really just making it less and less popular, to be honest. I think that NPC and IFBB, they could overtake the natural division and just crush if they really want to put money into it. But just like you mentioned earlier, there's not a whole lot of money in natural bodybuilding. And so there are a lot more, there's a lot more money in line when it comes to the Olympia and stuff like that. And for like the undrug tested stuff, if they wanted to, I think they could definitely overtake it if they really put their money into it. But I think it'd be better if the NPC and IFBB became just the Unnatural Organization, the OCB, and all these other organizations combined together and just made the Natural League and have them be like counterparts essentially.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. I always wonder, I've asked a couple of natural coaches or natural competitors, like, what do you think? And they're like, we need to mix them together. I mean, it's true. How do you, if your show, and again, I've had guys, there was only 3 people in the show. Like, we worked our ass off. I got them to 5 to 7% body fat. And like the 2 guys next to him, like, have never really worked out before. And like, he was happy he won, but like, he wasn't happy. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, he was happy, but he's not happy. There's different levels. If you are an athlete, you are competitive, you want to go against the best. So sometimes for my NPC guys, for example, I have some guys doing the LA Fitness Expo, where like it's a very competitive show. And if you win, like you have every sponsorship there that's going to be like, oh, hell yeah, you won the Classic Physique overall, you won the Open overall, like you can get a sponsorship right in the spot. So sometimes I prefer sending my guys to bigger shows, even if they don't have the best chance of winning. If they win, hell yeah, you deserved it. So that's just, I guess that's my rant about that. But it'd be cool if they could somehow put them together. I don't know how they would, but it'd be cool if they did.
I think you brought up a kind of a funny, interesting point, but I've definitely noticed some guys that show up at some of these bodybuilding shows are just completely unready. And I think the biggest thing is definitely to work with a coach. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a shout out. If you guys are listening to the podcast and want to compete, definitely go hit up Cody for a little bit of advice. I think he points you in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things I try to tell people, I don't consider myself a dickhead. That's not really my personality. I try to push off, but it's like, I try to be as easy as I can on lifestyle. And I'm sure you're familiar with this too, but it's like when it's a lifestyle person, you're not going to give them 2 hours of cardio. You're not going to take away all their food. They're not going to get tilapia and like boiled potatoes, right? Like they have a little bit of freedom, but it's like once you set foot on my team for contest prep, that all goes away. Like you hired me to win the show or get top 5 or whatever. I've never brought someone fat on stage, and I will never bring someone fat on stage. So no matter who you guys hire, just understand, don't go to them for contest prep and be like, hey, I really want to celebrate these 6 holidays in winter. That'd be great. No, it's you're kind of giving that up, So, but at least you'll come in shredded. That's all I could say.
100%.
Let's see here. What is your next big goal in regards to competing specifically? Like, I know you said you have your ambition of competing again, but do you have like one particular show in mind? Are you like, it would be really cool to go to NPC 2026? Is there anything specific, or is it just you want to compete whenever it kind of just lands on you convenience wise?
Yeah, I'm getting married this summer, and so that's the biggest thing I'm prepping for right now.
Absolutely.
I do have a show planned out in late August in Minneapolis. It's the I believe the Viking Cup or Viking something or the other. And so Minneapolis is only 5 hours away from me. So that is a drivable distance, and living in Nebraska, that's a pretty normal thing. And so that'll be in late August. Depending on how I do there, if I place top 3 or top 5, if I place top 5, I can qualify for the Oregon Cup. But if I'd like to place 1 or 2 to really prove to myself that I would be competitive at that show. And if I did do very well there, then I would definitely hop on to the Oregon Cup in September.
This might be a dumb question, but why would you drive 5 hours when you could fly like an hour? Is there not an airport there? Like, is that not an option? You just prefer driving?
I prefer driving to take my food and like all my stuff, the sheets and, whatever.
Yeah,
so
I was curious.
For me, just to have my stuff, because I flew to the Nashville show that I competed to this year, and that was fine. But flying out of a regional airport is relatively expensive, especially bringing my fiance out there with me, and then basically having to buy food all fresh when I get there, and then buying new sheets, and then being able, throwing stuff away. I just find driving to be a little bit better logistically, and also just to have like my family out there to support. Driving is a little bit more accessible for some people. So, but As far as flying goes, like I love flying and stuff like that. And traveling, obviously a big thing for me, but for shows specifically, I prefer driving, just to put everything in a cooler, have it all there, and just be able to go up and down.
Cool. Yeah, no, out of my 7 shows, I flew to 5, and it was not fun. I don't think a single one was fun. I only asked. I have some guys that like they're scared to death to fly, so I was like, I wonder if it's that. Or option 2 is I've had some guys that they know they retain water really, really badly when they fly. So it's not like they could fly. Let's say they compete Saturday. If they fly out on Thursday, how much water can we really get off on Friday if they're not an enhanced athlete that we could use a diazide or a diuretic? Like we could try, and I can give them a protocol. But there's been times that one specifically, I'm just heartbroken anytime I think about it. He was sick first off. His cortisol was already messed up. He had to fly from East Coast to West Coast, and he got here, bro. He looked like a water buffalo. And I was like, bro, fly out on Wednesday. So we have 2 or 3 days to get you ready. He flew out on, I believe it was Friday morning, and he got there and I was like, oh my God, bro. Like his body just didn't like it. He flew like 9 hours and it was just watery. And it was a very bad look. I was fired from my lap to bounce back. I was like, you know what, guys, mandatory. You're flying out 2 days out. You know, if we're going 9 hours away, we're going to be doing a couple days out. So either way.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about water retention and stuff like that. For me, it's more just like logistics. That's the thing.
Yeah, that makes way more sense. I was curious. That's why, you know, I wanted to get your opinion before I brought it up. But that makes complete sense. I would prefer driving as well, as long as it's not like 12 hours. Being that you're in like the physical therapy world and the rehab world in general, what would you say what is one underrated mobility or stability exercise, or just one tip and trick to keep you more agile, maybe decrease the likelihood of getting hurt? I don't know if you've seen how many influencers have tore their pec or just blew their back out doing deadlifts or barbell benches. Any just random specific tip you can give, or any type of tangent you want to go on that's related to a rehab or anything at all?
Yeah. So as far as, you know, underrated work in terms of rehab, I definitely think your mobility is a big thing that's just generally underrated, especially in the bodybuilding community. Some of like the more functional fitness communities tend to prioritize a little bit more. I have some qualms with the functional fitness community because I think a lot of them are wax. But I think mobility work is definitely very useful, and some flexibility work as well. Especially when it comes to like the lower back, hips, and shoulders. Those are like the 3 main areas people usually have a lot of issues with. Hip referring up into the low back even referring down to the hip, and then shoulders in general. I would say from my experience and from like working with clients and stuff like that, I think rotator cuff work is usually the most underrated for a lot of clients. I've worked with so many athletes and so many clients that have shoulder pain and shoulder stuff from repeated overhead stuff, especially baseball athletes, you know.
Yes.
That tends to be a big thing. So I think rotator cuff work is usually probably the most underrated stuff. I have a full article on like rotator cuff rehab on my website. You guys can check it out, aspire-fit.com.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I'll put it in the link below so people can check it out.
Yeah, it's totally free resource. Just use it. Get those muscles strengthened up.
So I wanted to ask you, this is not, it's related, but it's not. So when it comes to rehab work in general, is there anything else special? Let's say red light therapy, let's say the massage impact guns, let's say those, I forgot the proper name is, but like the leg compression sleeves that like it's electric and like squeezes you and does that. Is there any other work like that is helpful, or, you know, whether it's debunked? I know like the whole ice bath and all that's supposed to be debunked, but is there anything else where it's like, hell yeah, that's actually worth my time and effort, or absolutely not? There's no science behind it. Anything at all with any of those?
Yeah. So like the alternative therapies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so alternative therapies are called alternative therapies for a reason. They don't have as much evidence to support them. And that's why they're kind of like in this like kind of fringe chiropractic type of category, right? I'm not a fan of chiropractic at all. And so I won't get on that big of a topic because I don't want to offend a bunch of people. But in terms of alternative therapies that I think have some good evidence, I do. I don't have a whole lot of faith in most of them. Like hyperbaric, don't have a lot of evidence to support it. Red light might have some benefits, but I think it's a little bit outweighed. Ultrasound in the clinic. Oh my God. If you guys are still doing ultrasound in the physical therapy clinics, it just really makes me sad, because that stuff has basically no evidence either, but I see it in every single PT clinic I can find. I really don't put a whole lot of stake into most of those. I'm a big fan. I think manual therapy can have some really good benefits, just getting your hands on you and be able to mobilize, stretch, and stuff like that. I think that does have some good benefits, but from like, you know, shockwave and stuff, shockwave might actually be one of the ones that actually does have a little more evidence. But cupping has almost no evidence. If you're skeptical of it, likely it probably doesn't work near as well as you think it will. But I'm a much bigger fan of the basics, manual therapy. Traditional strengthening, rehab, stretching is typically going to be your best route for most things. If none of that works and we need to try something different, then let's go for it. Let's test. Let's try something a little bit different. But I would typically start with the tried and true stuff first before we get into the kind of like iffier areas of rehab.
Cool. Yeah. I'd only asked just because like I didn't go to physical therapy school. So I only went to my master's in kinesiology and exercise physiology and some nutrition. So it's like we talked about training, and we specifically had to write a paper about what we can and cannot do as a strength and conditioning coach or athletic trainer, like what we can and can't do. And it was specifically do not diagnose injuries, do not try to fix injuries, just like all these things. So I was always wondering, like I didn't put a bunch of research in it. So I figured most of them didn't work. Whether I do them or not, and whether it's placebo, that is completely up to me personally. But outside of, like you said, the manual one, so the Graston, I love Graston. That was like a staple. At least once a year, I'll go and just get the shit beat out of me with the metal rod and get that loosened up. Hurts a lot, but I feel really good after cupping. It's whatever. But you get a deep tissue massage once a month. Oh yeah, I love that.
Tons of evidence for massage. But yeah, it's so funny going through PT school because you're like, you're primed in, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to learn about how to really use like the eSTEM machine and use the ultrasound and like use all these cool tools. And you go through the lectures and they're like, yeah, doesn't really work, mixed evidence, doesn't really work, mixed evidence, doesn't work at all. Not sure why people do it. And so it's really interesting, but I think one of the biggest issues is actually just a lack of funding when it comes to research. And so if we just simply get more funding for research, obviously a lot of these different conditions like diabetes, cancer, and stuff like that, they get a ton of research because people are actively dying, but no one's dying because their calf is sore or because they, whatever, they might have a little more funding for like an ACL rehab. And there's tons of money into learning how to rehab those because of professional athletes and stuff like that. But for some of the more nagging aches and pains and stuff like that, there's not a whole lot of funding for those. And we also see similar issues when it comes to like exercise science research. You find a study from, maybe recent or maybe a couple of years ago, and you read through it and you're like, oh, there's 20 participants in this study. Like, can we actually make
that's not 200 people, that's 20 people.
Yeah, 20, right? 20. And so I just, I love what like Jeff Nippard and a few other like fitness people are doing in terms of like trying to help fund a little more research. But they're exercise science research and rehab research is not well funded like it should be.
So I have one follow-up and then I have another question for you. So one follow-up from my point of view. So as I've mentioned many times, like I have this autoimmune disease, right? So I've had it since 2021, post a jab, of course. But at the time when I was trying to figure out what it was, and I eventually found out, oh, I have mast cell, there was no funding, like zero, like 3-4 years, there was none. But ever since then, like there's been skyrocket. There's like 40,000 of us in a group chat. Like there's a lot versus before there was minimal. And as you would assume, once Big Pharma found that out, there's been so many new protocols. They actually gave me a cure that I start in 2 weeks that some people, it's fixed them. So like it didn't exist 3 years ago. So once they find out something's worth money, I don't know how they're going to be like, a sore calf is worth us investing $50 million in it. But, when they decide that we need to do that, yes. But they only started funding ours because a lot of like celebrities and like professional athletes ended up getting diagnosed with it. So now we got more money. But leading into, without getting on too much of a tangent, leading into my next question, of course, I have to ask this. What are your thoughts on the science-based lifting, whether it's training, diet, cardio, science-based bodybuilding in general? Do you think that they cherry pick studies to try and like fit their agenda? Do you think that we've always been science-based lifting, but now it just has a title to it? I guess just kind of give me it doesn't matter where we go into it. Just give me your insight in that.
Yeah. Science-based lifting versus the world. And so I would consider myself an evidence-based lifter. I wouldn't call myself a science-based lifter because it's been really overtaken by a bunch of teenagers who don't know what they're really talking about, right? They read 1 or 2 studies that, support the theory that they're advertising, but realistically, I mean, they've even done a recent study that compared dumbbell lateral raises to cable lateral raises and found no difference, even though the resistance profiles are completely different. And so you cannot tell me that holding a D handle that's attached to nothing is going to significantly improve the motor unit recruitment of this exercise. And so I think a lot of these kids are coming from a good place, but I think they really struggle in terms of critically thinking and really trying to figure out how this really applies in the real world, right? And what's actually worth getting upset about, because I think a lot of people really put a lot of their identity into this stuff. And so when you disagree with them on training, you're really disagreeing with them individually, and they take it super personally. For me, like, sure, I'm super down to learn. If there's some science-based, evidence-based method that is going to give me a better result in the gym, I'm going to try it out, right? It doesn't hurt my feelings if I was wrong. I mean, I used to do a bunch of stuff that apparently doesn't work, that, everything works at a spectrum, right? And I think the main issue that people are arguing about is that last little 5%. And it's so hard to distinguish if that's even going to get you a remotely better result, right? Because a lot of exercise science and nutrition, well, I mean, nutrition is a little more immediate, but especially from an exercise standpoint, takes months and months and potentially even years to see like a really good result from something. I think like a minimum like length of a study might be 8 to 12 weeks, and to see like very small changes. But a lot of this stuff, we're just, fighting over the last little bit that doesn't even matter, when most people that struggle with fitness and exercise aren't even going to the gym. They don't even like know where to start from the beginning. And so sure, like people can get really upset about the smallest little thing about, well, technically it doesn't bias this part of the lab because of X, Y, and Z biomechanics. But, Joe over here is 50 pounds overweight, doesn't struggle with that. He struggles with just like having the confidence to go to the gym or just being consistent with something. Right.
Exactly.
And so I think from not to get on a tangent, because I was definitely on the way to going on a tangent, but going back to the science-based lifters versus the world, I think a lot of them are just a little bit misguided. I think they should think about more about the practical application of things and seeing if it really makes that much of a difference, if it's worth even arguing about. Because I think a lot of coaches and a lot of people in the science-based community really disregard practicality and when it comes to their training. So for example, is it really practical to put a cuff on your humerus to be able to do a like little like movement that's 10 degrees that takes up 3 different pieces of equipment that's totally taking a ton of space? And then you're also filming it, so you also have a tripod that's limiting fucking Lindy Sue from being able to do her 15-pound dumbbell bicep curls, and she's just trying to get in shape, right? And so I think from a practicality standpoint, I think there's a lot of issues with the science-based people to get a very marginal and disputed benefit. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Cool. I'll go into a smaller tangent. I'll make it a little shorter. But first off, no, that was very respectful. I would have went way harder. No, no. But my only issue. So first off, like obviously, like we both have. I mean, your degree is higher than mine, but it's like we have a master's or PhD, whatever it may be, and it's like so we know what the studies are. We know how certain studies are just not done on people like us or bodybuilders or fitness people. Like I had to do a 20 to 40 page essay every week. Every single week we had a 20 to 40 or 50 page essay with 50 to 100 sources. It was insane. It was insanity. But we got to choose a topic, which is amazing. Because I would try to find something based around nutrition, bodybuilding, around training, bodybuilding, athletes. And then as I went on, I realized not a single damn study was done on a buff bodybuilder. I'd read the study, be like, oh, it was a 12-week fat loss study doing minimal cardio, a lot of cardio, whatever it may be. And it's like the average participant was 5'7" to 5'9", 190 to 220 pounds. Like that's an overweight American man. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I guess it's just hard to utilize some of the studies that people quote to the general population, or it only applies to general population, doesn't apply to bodybuilders. So that's my first aspect. Getting to what you said about the handles, it just pisses me off, bro. Whether you tell me it works or not, I'm not giving my client a handle that's not connected to anything to try and make them grip. It just pisses me off so much. I don't know why it does. It just pisses me off. The other day I saw the guy put his arm through a foam roller, like the hollow foam roller. It's like, my arm is never going to bend because my arm's a foam roller. He was doing tricep extensions with a foam roller on his arm because he couldn't bend his arm. And there's just certain things that I just don't understand. If you broke it down to me and said that this could make me 25% of a better bodybuilder, if I put my arm through a foam roller, I'm going to do that shit. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be a great bodybuilder. But if you tell me there's a chance that it's 0.3% and this is, if Ronnie Coleman would have won an additional title if he would have did this, when I've seen people quote that sentence, I'm like, you're insane. You're absolutely insane. But that's my tangent. That's all I wanted to say. I believe some of it. And then there's someone like, they just take it way too far. I'm like, there's no way you believe this. There's no way in hell you believe this. But I guess my last question related to this, and we'll switch topics entirely.
I had a little
Last question would be, what do you say? And this, I've had this argument with other science-based people, not like a TNF or Sebastian, but like just other smaller tier teenagers. And they said that diet does not matter. Sleep does not matter. Vitamins and minerals don't matter. Training would trump all those if you had to put them in the same category when it comes to bodybuilding. We're not talking about contest prep versus bulk, and just bodybuilding in general, that training is king, and your diet and your sleep and recovery and all that doesn't matter. They even said that your training intensity and controlling your volume was more important than their genetics. So what are your thoughts? If you had to just pick one out of all those together, what do you feel like is the number one when it comes to bodybuilding specifically in terms of those factors or options?
I hate looking at things in a vacuum because it's not what is in reality. That's the problem. So I understand this argument, right? So it's the argument that training is king because obviously if you never did any sort of training at all, you would never have any sort of stimulus for muscle growth. And so by default, like, yeah, you have to train if you want to build muscle, but it's not like all these other things are no longer important, right? Because sure, you can train, but if you don't sleep at all, you will die. First of all, right? So you will die faster from not sleeping and not, whatever, compared to, for example, let's take the other extreme. Like if you don't eat, you have zero nutrition, technically, you would die super, super fast compared to, not training at all. So I think the biggest issue is like looking at things in a vacuum and being like, well, this is king and this is whatever. It all works together. And so a plan that optimizes all those individual factors that makes a good bodybuilder, makes a good athlete, makes a good person or whatever from a physical standpoint is always going to be a better way to look at your training and nutrition and stuff like that compared to just looking at things in a vacuum. Like, oh, this is the only thing I need to focus on. This is the only thing I need to focus on. I think a lot of people look at that, want to look for that little magic trick or that one thing that's going to make all the difference. Every hook on Instagram is like, this one little secret is keeping you from making 90% of the gains in the gym. It's all bullshit. It's all fucking people just making shit up from ChatGPT, right? So, and that's a whole different side tangent, but
different rant.
Let's hone it in. But yes, it's just so funny. It's just so funny.
So getting into training splits really quick. Just because this is one of more topics I argue with people all the time. So I don't have a favorite training split. There's scenarios I will give, depends on what division they are, and maybe I'll get your insight on this. So let's say they're doing men's physique. I'll make sure that they're getting chest twice a week. Either their delts are getting hit twice a week, maybe their back is getting hit twice a week, but whatever they're lacking, that's how I base my splits. No science related. Just like I look at you, oh, holy crap, your lats are terrible. You have no lats. I'm going to try and give you a little bit more volume to try and get those babies growing, right? Versus I had an argument the other day. He was actually on my team. We ended up having a discussion. We found a split that we both like, but I had him doing chest twice a week. He has no chest. He's natural. Just doesn't have very good chest genetics or mass. But he has really humongous legs. And he's like, well, science says legs have to be hit twice a week. I was like, but if we do, then like your chest isn't gonna have enough time because you only want to train this, so many days a week. He's like, well, that doesn't matter. Like everything getting hit once, legs need twice because science. It's like your legs are humongous. You have some of the most gifted legs I've ever seen. We could stop training them. Like for Jalen, my classic physique pro, we do legs every 30 days. His legs are too big. They grow too quick. So we have to do it every 3 to 4 weeks. So I tried explaining that to him. Is like, nope, science says. So I let him do the split. Guess what happened after 2 months? He got 0 chest gains because he just wasn't stimulating it enough. But his legs kept getting bigger. He's like, Cody, I don't really like the way I look. It's like, really? I told you that 8 weeks ago. So we switched it. I gave him a lot more chest, shoulder, back volume. I gave him minimal leg volume. And he started growing quite fine. So I guess just getting into you, like, do you believe that no matter what, you have to train something twice a week for it to be optimal? Or do you do things more so how I do it in terms of like, I'll look at you and like, I'll give more volume to things that are weak? How do you approach it personally, in your opinion?
Dude, I 100% agree with you. Blindly following the science, because that's what the science says, is not actually science-based. And so if your goal is to train for a specific outcome, training specificity is one of the most important super basic principles, like as basic as progressive overload, that you need to follow. So if you want to grow your chest, well, you should probably follow a program that is going to bias chest development. Same way in reverse I know you don't train women. I don't really train women either, but I'm a big fan of training for the specific outcome you're trying to have, because it's optimal to train a muscle group twice a week. My fiance doesn't want huge traps. So we're not training traps twice a week for her, even though that's technically optimal or whatever, right? Like her main goals are to grow certain areas more than others. And so that's what her training prioritizes and focuses on. Now, if you on the flip side, yeah, like, of course, training twice a week is most likely better than training once a week, and getting more volume is typically better than getting less volume. But apparently that's now a loaded statement to say that, but it's relatively true and evidence. But you do not need to follow there are no rules. You should base your training program based on the specific outcomes you're going for, not just because that's what the science says.
I agree with that entirely. There's nothing else for me to add to that. I agree with that entirely. Yes. I don't disagree with science, but when you blindly just have statements that you have to do this, I don't believe that. Bodybuilding is one of the most bro science sports that I could ever confirm. I've coached 1,800 plus people, and some of the things I've seen with my own eyes, and like, they're guys that I know are not cheating, is just mind blowing. Like, it doesn't fit what I've seen in any book I've ever read or any study, but that's a tangent for another day. Right. So we're almost done, by the way. Only a couple of things I want to ask you. If you had to pick one thing, you could pick multiple. If you had to pick one thing, what frustrates you the most in the fitness industry? Is there, whether it's, for me, I guess mine would be the science-based lifting. But what is something that pisses you off? You feel like it could be better, it could be less popular? What would you say that would be, in your opinion?
What makes me the most frustrated? There are so many things in the fitness industry, because the fitness industry is huge. It's, of course, everyone. It's anybody who's in the gym, which is tons and tons of people. You have anywhere from the 15, 16-year-old kid that's like just getting into science-based lifting. And then you have all the way up to the 60-year-old, cardiologist that is super out of touch with everything and telling everybody that carbs are evil and gonna make you fat because it's gonna spike your insulin and make you die and shit like that. And so it's a huge amount of people in the fitness industry. And one of the things that really frustrates me is the complete, like, black and white. Like, this is 100% bad for you. This is 100%, the best thing in the world, and blah, blah, blah. The lack of nuance when it comes to short form content. Obviously, you can't fit in all the like little gray area pieces in a 60-second video, so it can be a little bit polarizing. And I think probably the biggest thing that really frustrates me is the blatant misinformation from certain individuals that are going to be unnamed, mostly carnivore people and stuff like that, and all these wellness weirdos. But I think it's just people who are unable to critically think, that have very, very loud opinions, are probably the most frustrating. And you can, there are people in the science-based community that are like that. There are people in the wellness and biohacking areas that are like that. But it's the people who don't recognize the nuance that are the most frustrating, for sure. Or the coaches who never, don't have any qualifications, that, charge people an arm and a leg to make them get shitty results and stuff like that. So
there we go.
Then we have to undo all their bad habits and stuff like that. So
yeah, no, I agree with that entirely. That's one of my top 5 at all times. It's not always just underqualified people talking the most. It's sometimes that the people that get the most love sometimes are those who are just super jacked. So let's just say someone who's just genetically blessed. They just came out the womb, just great genetics. Whether they became a natural pro or an IFBB pro. Some of these guys, like, I'm not going to say they didn't work hard, because that's not what I'm trying to say, but some of them, it came to them easier. And, no matter what they would have done, they would have been a great bodybuilder, right? So then they start spewing things that work for them. It's like, bro, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, that's not going to apply to the other 99.9% of the population. So it's almost like whether you're very attractive, you're very buff, like, they have a lot more say, if that makes sense. Almost like a pretty privilege in the fitness industry. So sometimes I'll see a girl or a guy to say this insane statement. I'm like, they are both good looking people. That makes sense why people would like like it. But like, to say that carnivore diet is king, like keto isn't, or like this, like, that's an insane statement to make. So I guess it's just my rant. People that are not qualified getting popular, even though they're not qualified to give those opinions. So that's all I had to say about that.
Yeah, it makes sense why people gravitate towards people like that, because as a coach, you are kind of your first client. You yourself are your own first client. So you do need to kind of walk the walk and talk the talk, but just because you shouldn't base your whole resume based off of the profile photo. Like, look at everything else in addition to maybe what they're doing, right?
Of course. But I understand why they do it too, like I understand entirely. If I saw, like, let's choose a Nick Walker, even if Nick Walker had the most insane take ever, no one's like, doesn't make any sense. You'd be like, he's freaking top 10 in the world. Look at his training, look at whatever, like, you'd believe it. So I understand entirely. Makes sense.
Have you seen
Right.
the Phil Heath trolling stuff?
Which aspect? He was his arm joke, or which one?
Oh, he was posting some like super interesting looking exercises and kind of trolling people and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And Brandon Hendrickson made a video that someone, yeah, they were just making things up, saying that they made it to the Olympic because of that exercise, right? Something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
Yes, and they were joking, but some people in the comments are like adding to my workout program.
100%.
All right, almost very run-on joke in the fitness industry right now. But how do you feel about the mentorships or coaches that are coaching coaches on how to be coaches who coach coaches? How do you feel about that? Like, I understand there are good mentorships, and I would love to have one day, but some of them seem like absolute BS and a money grab. But any insight you have?
100%. I think coaches and all this stuff it's a really interesting day and age where, basically anybody can be connected, anybody can sell anybody anything essentially. And so I have done mentorships in the past that I found were really helpful. People who have had who have had actual experiences doing the thing I'm trying to do. But a lot of these coaches who coach coaches coaching coaches are just people who have just done other coaching programs, who are just selling the same thing over and over and over again. This essentially in this like not technical, but feels like an MLM essentially. And so a lot of the information realistically you can find online when it comes to building a business and stuff like that. A lot of the information's out there, but where mentorship can be useful is when it comes to implementation, kind of like fitness, right? Where you can find a lot of the information you need in terms of, calculating your macros and figuring out how many calories you should have through the Mifflin-St. Jean equation, stuff like that. But when it comes to actually implementing all of it together, it can be helpful to have a coach or a mentor who's done it. The main thing is not a lot of these coaches who coach coaches have actually done the thing that they're advertising they can help you do. And I think a lot of the income claims that they make are one of the bigger issues that are also just not FTC compliant. And so they could definitely get shut down at any moment for the crazy claims that they'll make.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest things about like this industry is specifically targeting people who have no experience. And so it would make more sense for me, when I did a mentorship with Jordan Duggar and IFCA, they ended up selling their fitness coaching business for over $1 million. And that was a great mentorship that I had because he really helped me. He helped me scale very quickly because I already had the main things that helped me become a good coach. I just needed systems, strategy, and a plan. My main issue is like the targeting the 20-year-old kid or the 25-year-old person who has like no experience. They're like, hey, you can become an online fitness coach making 10, 20, 30, 50, $100 million a month. And you don't even need to be certified. I'll teach you exactly how to do it and blah, blah, blah. And I absolutely hate those because it's just promoting the worst part about the fitness industry of people essentially getting, paying for something and getting scammed by, working with a bad coach and stuff like that. I'm sure we both have experiences of clients working with us after working with a terrible coach before. And it's like, hey, I don't trust you because guy before you was terrible. I'm like, yeah, I don't blame you. That guy was terrible. He's not qualified. And so the coaches coaching coaches thing is super interesting. It will eventually crash. I think it is crashing. I think people are seeing right through it.
The past month or two, it's the lowest. I mean, there's been a couple people got exposed, rightfully so. So I think it's slowly going downhill. Yes, I'm going to bring it back, guys. I'm going to bring it back, hopefully.
Okay.
I'm not going to charge you $10,000 either. So but either way. But yeah, I want to give my insight on, like, obviously, like, this is my 10th year coaching. I had my first clients in 2014, 2015, and it just has skyrocketed since then. But I don't know how to say it, except it offends me. It offends me when I see someone who's like 21, 22, or just early 20s, who it's impossible that they had 1,000 clients. It's physically impossible. There's no way they did that. And they're like, I've helped thousands of people scale their business. Like, bro, you were just born a couple of years ago. That's not physically possible.
Number one online fitness coach.
Once you see high ticket seller, it's done. Don't even do it. So I've had instances, and I've told the story the other day on just normal TikTok, but one of my clients, he has an ads company. So he helps you, no matter what the business is, he helps you run ads. Works really great. Right. So he had one of these course gurus. I don't know what his course was about. It was, it had fitness in it, but it was pretty much he helps you scale your business. Right. And my client has a how-to book. So he'll say go to Miami for the weekend, go to whatever, get a penthouse, rent it, take a bunch of videos how successful you are, rent a Rolex, rent a Lamborghini, show that you have the money from the business that you do, but like they don't even have the business. They've never coached a bodybuilder through a contest prep, but like, you know, I have a Lamborghini. I'm well aware of what people think about me when I have them. Like, oh, he must be successful. He must be a great coach. It's like, no, I could literally be renting this thing or leasing it. And like, you know, it doesn't make me a good coach. But I guess just my main takeaway is like, do not base their materialistic items off their coaching ability. They could be an absolute shit show of a coach and they just happen to like come from a rich family. You would never know. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. And anybody who says they're going to make you make 20, 30, 40K a month from coaching, when I can't speak for Ben, like, you know, I know how much I make, but we do, I'm sure we both do really well, but we've been doing it for so long. To think you're just going to go from 0 to making 100K a month is delusional. That's not going to happen. So that's all I wanted to say. Just finish up that don't fall for it, please. And it's usually the guys who don't have much experience or much money that are willing to blow 5K in a course and just absolutely be ripped off. But that's it. That's all I'd say.
100%. I totally agree.
Cool. I'm pretty much done on my end. I did want to leave it open to you really quick. Is there anything you want to ask me from my point of view? You know, I'm not a specialist in everything on earth, but any topic you feel like we didn't touch on, anything you want to know about me, and that's pretty much all I had to say. So I had to want to finish up on.
I have tons of questions for you, and I would love to hop on another podcast to go over all those, but this is already like an hour and 13 minutes. But I guess I don't have anything else. I'm a little bit fried from the call, but I'm a little bit fried from the podcast. But we'll have to definitely link up again, and I think it'd be good to have another convo for sure.
Cool. No, I'm absolutely down for that. Well, first off, thank you for hopping on. Did you have any sponsors? Where can people find you? Anything you want to shout at the very end about you specifically? Anything at all? I don't think I've seen you promote a bunch of stuff, but anything you have, feel free to, you know, throw it up here really quick.
Yeah, I'm not a sponsor junkie. I'm not one of those guys that has, you know, like TNF has like 15 links at the end of every Instagram post and stuff like that. But as far as sponsorship goes, I work with Grill Mind, but I would not say I'm a sponsorship shell. You can find me at Dr. Ben Petersen on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or aspire-fit.com for a lot of my free resources and stuff like that. But that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for hopping on. And guys, I try to have an episode every week. If there's anybody you guys ever want, let me know. I can see what I can get my hands on. And thank you for watching. Team Dial to the moon.
To the moon.